Hello gamers! Today we are going to go over the full development lifecycle of a video game. What we do at the start, what we do during intense development, and what we do after we launch a game. You were many to share your problems and wishes in terms of game dev content, and for that I am very thankful. You can always submit more, the link is in the description, or you can just write a comment in any kind of video. I always read all the comments. The video is based on one such feedback of one of you guys. It goes as this: a video or videos of the full development lifecycle of a game, maybe discussing things like project planning, proper testing, unit tests, user acceptance testing, building, publishing, versioning, marketing, blah 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 blah. For reference, I'm a software developer by trade and hobbyist game developer, like many I guess, but I hope to transition to game development full-time at some point. I'm finding that the pipelines, architecture, and coding patterns I applied my job aren't always very useful for game dev. Great! First thing, game dev is quite similar to software development in terms of pipeline, because at the end you are producing code. The big difference with game development is that game development is really, there's a heavy weight on art, and the artistic part is what makes the entire process much more chaotic and difficult to control. In terms of marketing, it's also different. In software, you are selling a product that solves a problem, ideally, and in game development you are selling entertainment and emotions. With that being said, there are three parts in the life of a video game. We have the pre-production, then the production, and finally the post-production or operations, because that sounds much fancier. Let's go, we will cover each stage and each box. So the pre-production phase is where you plan, and oh boy, you are going to need to plan. Planning is not just about setting some dates on a calendar. We are talking about ideation, brainstorming, we are talking about research, prototyping, resource planning and tooling, at least. The pre-production is a lot of planning, but ultimately it tries to answer two simple questions. Is the game feasible? In other words, can you make it? And second, is the game financially viable? In other words, does it make sense to work on this? So if the second question is no, then maybe you just make a game for fun. Keep it simple, do as you want, have fun, that's it. If the second question is important to you and must be a yes, you have to take everything seriously, including market research and marketing. Your favorite topic, I know that. And logically, the first question must also be a yes. A game that is not feasible is not financially viable, or it's just a very long bet. Alright, let's take an example. You might have a new idea. Oh, I would like to make a horror space management game. You will brainstorm game mechanics, level design, characters, story, and so on. This is a lot of fun, and your scope will explode as you discover all kinds of paths you could go and try out. At the same time, don't move in blindly. Do your research and collect as much information that you can. Research what exists in the digital and physical world, research how the market currently is, how the market is going to evolve in the next few years, what kind of things are currently popular, which game failed miserably and why. There are some websites that help you analyze games, for example, and this can help you shape your idea and decide who the audience for that game will be. So research is not just about the game itself, it's about the target audience. A casual mobile game for teenagers is different than a strategy game aimed at adults. From how you market the game up to choosing the right price, it's all part of this phase. If you want to build a game that people want to play, you must first understand if there is a pool of people like that and what would make them play your game. You can build a game that's just for your artistic expression, of course, that's totally fine. The lifecycle can still help you make sure your game will be played by some people. Alright. Let's say you have this idea of a horror space management game and brainstorm in all directions. In the pre-production phase, you need to make small and cheap prototypes to test your ideas and assumptions. And small and cheap is really important, so you can do many of them. In your game, let's say you have aliens and you have the idea that maybe through dialogue you can convince them to not eat your crew. Or maybe you have a cafeteria and based on what the crew members eat, certain aliens don't like to eat crew members that eat veggies, for example. Some crazy things like that. So that's your crazy idea. What you do next? Well, you don't build this system. So you don't open Unity, you don't open Unreal Engine, you don't open any other game engine, you don't start coding this thing out. you take some post-its, some Legos, and you roleplay this 20 times on your table. Maybe you do it with your team, maybe you do it alone. Try to find out if it's actually already funny with your imagination, with real physical pieces. If it is, there's a good chance it might also be funny digitally. If you get bored after already 2 rounds and you have no idea, or you found out, oh, there's this, there's that, maybe then you will drop the idea, but this is a cheap way to do it. So the goal is really cheap and fast prototypes. Test your ideas before you blindly and stubbornly just implement it in your game. This is the thing to do. So in other words, the prototypes you make helps you find issues in your game design as early as possible for as little resources as possible. And it also helps you answer those 2 questions earlier, and this leads you to planning as well. Planning at a minimum is setting some key milestones. The 2 basic milestones are: when are you going to start working on the project, meaning that you really start to work on it and put regular effort on it. And second, when do you want to release it? Then you work backwards from the public release date to actually now when you want to start. The question to answer is whether or not you want an early access phase. If yes, you can split in beta and alpha releases. How long do you plan to stay in beta? 6 months? How long do you plan to stay in alpha? Another 6 months? From early access to public release is probably over 6 months, if not over 12 months. If you plan less, then you should actually consider having no early phase at all, because what's a 2 months early access phase? Does this even make sense? I'm not sure. If it is such a short phase, maybe you replace it with more playtesting with a bigger audience. Before that, you can also consider releasing early builds in private communities. Finally, based on your ideas, your research, and your awesome prototypes, you can roughly estimate the development time and find a date for the announcement trailer. And once this is done, you look at the complete schedule again and see if it actually makes sense and move things around if not. Overall, don't worry too much about planning. Whatever you plan, you will be wrong. Everybody is always wrong about planning. But planning is necessary, because failing to plan is planning to fail. So do this exercise and set yourself some hard deadlines. With deadlines, you will have a better progress overall. And not only that, you will know if the scope of your game is under control or not. And if not, well, move some deadlines or start shopping features. The last thing to do before you go into production is to choose the tools that best fit for what you want to build. Because now you know what you want to build, so you can decide what you will use to build it. And you also know how long you want to work on it. So you can decide, oh, do I have time to learn a new tool, or do I use what I already know? This is very important. Practically, you choose a game engine you'll use, set up project management tools, set up data and art pipelines, version control. You prepare the technology stack so you can start to work and produce these things. There can be many more things here. Part of pre-production is also writing a game design document, having concept art, mood boards, collecting inspirations, building a team, making sure there is a financial plan behind it, and many other things. It's fun and it's a long phase. Don't underestimate nor shortcut this phase, just trust the process. The production phase. This is where you make the game. Very simple. First, I wanted to say that this is where the suffering begins, but that would be wrong, because the suffering is everywhere. Making a game is like eating glass all day long. So, yeah, what happens when you start building a game? You discover all the mistakes you did during pre-production. Someday you don't believe in the idea anymore. What you prototyped turned out to not be enough and gave you wrong signals. Your plan is already behind schedule. You face technical issues with the tools that you chose, and so on. You will, at this point, maybe you even think, why did I do all this planning? Because I did so many mistakes. Well, this is just part of the process. Game development is not a straight line to success or to releasing a game. It's just so many iterations and redoing things again. So think of game development like an iterative process. You try something, it doesn't work, you try something else, it doesn't work, you try something else. Like many things in life. So game dev is just, an intense activity. You see, this life cycle is dynamic and flexible. It must be. Everything you build during production will grow through a smaller version of this entire cycle. Every little system starts as an idea, gets prototyped, then you decide, oh, I will work on this 5 days, Maybe I will refactor it at the end, so it's clean, test it, and now it's done. Now you have to maintain the code forever. It is part of your game. Do you get it? Everything is a cycle, alright? Everything is a cycle. It's all about iterations over and over and over in a way that is sustainable. Otherwise, you'll burn out and break the cycle. But it's all about iterating. Ideally, you also want to keep your game in a playable state so that you can push out builds that can be tested by you, by your team, by your friends, by your community. Playtesting is a small island of its own. On one side, you have, as a developer, you can write unit tests. Those are scripts that you write to confirm that your code behaves as intended, if you have low confidence in your code, of course. For example, a unit test could call create new character, and the test would check if the character has been created, is in the scene, and if maybe a save file has been created for saving the progress of that character, for example. Unit test is more code that you need to maintain. In my opinion, don't write any tests at all. Reserve those only for critical systems. If you come from an engineering background and learned how to write tests, well, actually, there is very high chance that you don't want to write tests at all. Seriously, keep it for the most critical part. A code base with outdated tests, it's the worst code base of all. Another way to play test is with real people, humans. And again, there are many ways to conduct playtesting sessions. It depends at what stage of the development you are. Either you test with people in your team or with external people. For you, it's all about setting the right environment where you can collect feedback, criticism in a somehow productive way. I say productive, I mean sometimes if your game is really bad, it's better that they look you right into the face and tells you, dude, your game sucks. Might be hard to hear, but this is the feedback you want, okay? You don't want just your friends and family giving you thumbs up and letting you roll for 6 years in a small bubble that you believe that you are building something great. Get real feedback. The hard feedback is the best, and the good feedback is just good to keep going. But you need the hard feedback to improve. When you playtest with external people, it becomes a little exercise in logistics and organization. You need to find playtesters, communicate with them, book a location, maybe handle legal documents like NDAs to avoid leaks, have a privacy policy if you want to record how they play, how they behave, keyboard and mouse, whatever. And maybe you factor in some kind of compensation for that time. Maybe you need also someone else running those sessions. Usually the creator just observes people playing and they don't interact. They just lay back and suffer in silence, alright? Now, welcome to the marketing department. What most developers hate, but hey, if you want people to know that you exist, you have to do something. Now, I will not cover how to do marketing. There are other experts out there that are much better at this. I just tell you this, and this is really important. So, everyone and everything is part of marketing. Let that sink in, alright? Everyone and everything is part of marketing. Everything that goes out, from screenshots to GIFs, up to casual tweets of your team members, absolutely everything has an impact on your marketing effort. Even the description and the bio of your teams on social media, everything has an impact and can give you a small boost here and there, or it can sometimes spiral out of control and break your brand. So take it seriously. Absolutely everything has an impact, right? Absolutely everything. Now, in the life cycle of a game, what's important, I think, is that the development and the marketing are as close together as possible. Why that? Well, marketing needs content and development needs feedback, and both together they can help each other. So you are iterating all the time, and the faster you are iterating, the faster you can have something ready to show. And the more content you have, the more power you have to push the marketing machine forward. Now, whether your marketing is good or bad, that's for another video. Developing, testing, sharing with the world, it's all tightly coupled together. One feeds the other one. Developing without testing is a bit crazy. Developing without marketing is gambling. Marketing without developing is scamming. Marketing without testing is risking damaging your brand. Testing without developing is called test-driven development. And testing without marketing is, I don't know. Of course, all this assumes you checked the two boxes, feasible and financially viable. At some point, your calendar is set, your game is or will be ready, your marketing is running, people have played and tested your game, you are on track to push the green button and go live. Congratulations, the job is done, let the money rain. Whoa. Not so fast. You just launched your game, great, but now it's time for post-production or operations. This phase starts as soon as you have any version out in the world that people can play. Even a demo triggers this phase. Here you have lots of boxes because now you have to take care of a living product. First, let's assume you don't let your game die. It happens. Of course, sometimes a game is a disaster and you might choose to fire and forget. But let's say you have enough success to continue being a game developer. What are your next steps? One important part is maintenance. From one side, making sure your game is updated, works on new OS versions. Sometimes the library, especially on mobile, needs to be updated. Another part of maintenance is also investigating and fixing bugs that your user report to you. Maintenance makes sure that the quality of your game does not degrade over time. Then there is content updates, and this is important because it improves the quality of your game over time, gives player a reason to stay, and also attracts new player to you. You can also consider new platforms like a port to PC or Switch to be content updates. Then you have marketing and sales. Once you launch a game, you will see that you still need to push the marketing machine and make sure you get a flow of new people playing your game. You need a discount schedule for different periods of the year. You can join bundles or special events. You can sell a few more copies here and there, but the main benefit really is to make sure that new people know about your game, know about your studio, so that you have, let's say, a better position for the next game or the next product that you're going to push out. And this leads us to community management and IP development. You have players, so take good care of them. Listen to what they say, engage with them, and so on. Foster a good and positive community. Don't call them weirdos if they don't like something that you did. Don't block them if you disagree with them. Basic good customer service stuff. If your game works well, you will have an opportunity to develop the intellectual property further as well. Scott Cawthon made over 50 games before making Five Nights at Freddy, which everyone knows now. And now there are 20 more sequels. This is IP development. Maybe you start making plushes or other derivative products based on your game's unique appeal. That's what it is. And this can create more revenue streams to support your studio over the years. So the work does not end with a launch. It's called launch because there's new work to start afterwards. But wait, there's also a few side missions. And I listed a few major ones, but there can be many more. You know how side missions are. Let's go from top to bottom. The legal structure. Do you conduct business on your own name, or do you make a company, like a limited liability company, which does exactly what it says? It protects you as a person from being liable. If you make a Pokemon clone and Nintendo sues you, you can lose everything. But if you make a company and then you copy Pokemon, well, then just you lose your company. Now, this is just one use case. I don't give legal advice, alright? Whether you need a company or not, this is up to you. You need to do your own research on this subject. Then, depending on your game, you need legal documents as well, like a privacy policy and terms of service. It's not difficult, it just takes time to get the one that fits your product. Trademarks or even design patterns are also something to consider. It's different than copyright. Trademarks, as I understand, are a bit more powerful in case someone copies you. You can trademark names, logos, slogans, jingles even. And you can register your unique character design or user interfaces as design patterns, and so on. It's not cheap at all, but it exists. And having trademarks will make you feel like a real CEO, so it's always this. Another important point is funding. Do you fund and sustain yourself, or do you apply for funding on a national, regional, or even international level? Do you look for investors? Those are big big side quest that is pushing your business on a very specific path. It's there for you to consider. Sometimes there are opportunities to get smaller grants here and there to get a little boost. Just keep in mind that no money is free. There is always a contractual relationship and something is demanded from you. In terms of marketing, there are also important details to think about, like securing the domain name, having a dedicated email, securing all social media handles, even those you don't intend to use, just to make it harder so that bad actors, if they want to copy your game and impersonate your brand or company, they have a harder time because those let's say true handles are already taken. So many side quests. Alright, we just covered the tip of the iceberg. There's so much to talk about. You know, every box on this page is difficult. Every box. And this is also not a bulletproof blueprint to game dev success. It's just a rough map of the processes that are involved. If there's one thing to remember is that there is a lot of iterations in game development. It's a creative activity, so it's also chaotic by design. And when you see all this, you understand also that scoping your game to be the right size is really important. Because the development in the production phase is just one box. I mean, it's a big box, but it's just one box. You still have the rest all around to take care to have a successful game and not go bankrupt after 1 month of success, alright? There are of course exceptions, but there are also many sad stories. Alright, if you want to dive deeper into specific subjects, write a comment below or fill the form, you know how it works. You can download this sheet for free, the link is in the description. May this help you in your hustle or game dev journey. I thank you very much for watching, I'll see you next time, go work on your game.